The heavy oak doors of the Grand Assembly Hall swung shut with a resonant thud, sealing in a tension so thick it seemed to press against the lungs of everyone present, as if the very air itself refused to breathe. Evangelist Jimmy Swaggart stepped to the witness table, his simple dark suit chosen with quiet intention, a small silver cross on his lapel catching a stray gleam from the overhead lights. His eyes, sharp and unwavering, swept across the chamber with an intensity that belied his humble demeanor. A man braced for a confrontation that would echo far beyond these walls. Across from him, Michelle, entering with an air of commanding authority, carried herself in a tailored charcoal suit that spoke of power and preparation. Her practiced smile balanced warmth with steel. Flanked by a line of attorneys clutching briefcases and advisors murmuring in low tones, she settled into her seat. Her fingers tapped softly against the polished wood, posture rigid, ready to steer the storm that she knew was coming. The placard outside named this gathering a Council on Ethical Accountability, but inside it felt less like procedure and more like an arena where truth could forge or shatter reputations in a single moment. Red tally lights from national networks blinked steadily, their cameras fixed on every gesture, broadcasting unfiltered to a nation watching in suspense. Reporters filled the gallery, fingers hovering over keyboards, while security officers stood rigid at the doors, radios at the ready, anticipating eruption. The great clock ticked mercilessly forward, each second slicing the silence. Chairman Mike Johnson cleared his throat, his voice steady but edged with unease as he outlined the purpose of the session: to probe questionable financial flows and conflicts surrounding charitable organizations tied to prominent figures. The words, though procedural, bore weight aimed squarely at Michelle's causes. Her posture stiffened, eyes narrowing, as if she already sensed the challenge beneath the surface. Swaggart, calm yet resolute, reached for a manila envelope on the table before him. Its creased edges and bold red stamp marked it as no ordinary document. He unsealed it with surgical precision, the sound of tearing paper echoing through the chamber like a blade drawn in silence. He did not need to glance inside. His preparation was unshakable. "Mrs. Michelle," he began, his southern cadence slow, deliberate, each syllable cutting through the silence. "Can you explain why $10 million were funneled through a shell corporation in the Bahamas into organizations you support, just weeks before a major initiative was announced?" The question struck like a spark in dry timber. The room shifted, breaths caught, heads turned sharply. Michelle recoiled, her polished composure cracking with a flicker of irritation. Her eyes locked onto his, a defiant glint forged from years in the public eye. Instead of answering, she leaned closer to her microphone, still live, still transmitting to millions, and delivered three sharp words: "Get him out." A collective gasp rippled across the chamber, the sound spreading like a stone cast into still water. Security officers hesitated, hands hovering near their radios, weighing duty against the unfolding drama. Swaggart remained unshaken, his spine straight, gaze fixed, embodying a strength that would not yield. Michelle turned toward the chairman, her voice rising in indignation. "He's out of order, spreading baseless accusations with fabricated evidence." But her words, meant to seize control, only ignited the tension further. Swaggart tapped the envelope once, calmly, purposefully, signaling he was far from finished. The gallery erupted in whispers. "What's in there? What could it be?" He met Michelle's stare evenly. "You wrote this, didn't you?" The power dynamic didn't just shift, it cracked wide open. The envelope's weight hinted at revelations sharp enough to unravel her carefully built narrative. As officers stepped forward uncertainly, their boots echoing on the marble floor, Swaggart slid the document closer to the microphone. The red stamp gleamed like a warning flare. Her voice returned, shaky now. "This is a hoax, nonsense." But Swaggart didn't address her. He turned instead to the cameras, his voice steady as he spoke directly to the nation. "You wanted me silenced, but what is inside this envelope demands to be seen first." The words pulled viewers closer, the confrontation now fully ignited. With deliberate care, Swaggart broke the seal, the snap of paper splitting the silence like the crack of a starter's pistol. He unfolded a single ivory sheet, its bold handwriting slanting with haste and anger, and placed it beneath the document camera. The ivory sheet displayed under the camera carried a date, a private watermark, and a chilling sentence underlined twice. He's a problem. Handle it. Beneath it, a signature written with unmistakable flourish. Camera zoomed in as Michelle's face paled, her hands tightening on the desk, eyes transfixed on the damning words. Jimmy Swaggart explained with calm precision, "This letter arrived anonymously just days ago. The ink is fresh. The signature matches authenticated samples, stroke for stroke." Michelle's lawyer leapt up, shouting, "Objection! Fake! Unverified!" But the chamber's focus clung to the document. Swaggart's eyes locked on Michelle. "You tried to dismiss me, but this cannot be denied." Her voice cracked. "Not mine, a forgery." From the gallery, a southern voice rose. Eleanor Finch, a former correspondence officer, stood firm, holding a verified sample. "That's her handwriting, no doubt. Identical in every loop." The chairman asked if she would swear to it. Finch's reply cut through the air. "I don't need an oath to tell the truth." On social media, the phrase "handle it" letter erupted, trending within minutes, clips spreading like wildfire. Michelle bent toward her advisor, whispering frantically, "They weren't supposed to have that." The microphone caught it. Swaggart answered coolly, his tone unshaken. "But we do. Truth always finds its way." The hearing shifted into a reckoning. A screen lit up, showing New York's Attorney General, Letitia James, resolute. "For the record," she said, her voice slicing through the tension, "this letter was authenticated by my office. The handwriting matches recent correspondences exactly." Gasps rippled through the room. Chairman Johnson pressed further. "Was there an investigation?" James nodded. "Yes, it tied directly to irregular charitable funding. Political pressure buried it, until now." The words "political pressure" detonated like a fuse. Michelle snapped back, "Absurd! A witch hunt from people jealous of success." Swaggart remained calm while James pressed on. "My facts stand. The last evidence survived court scrutiny. And here," she handed over a sealed USB, "is more." Swaggart's gaze bore into Michelle. "You ordered me out for questioning funds. Now we have your signed directive verified. Do you still dismiss it?" Michelle sneered. "You're a showman staging a setup." James cut in sharply. "Then why does the ink match?" The room froze. The truth was undeniable. Congressman Jamie Raskin raised concern. "Given the threats emerging, I moved to adjourn for safety." Swaggart rose slowly with quiet conviction. "I respect that, but I came here to speak, not to hide. If I leave, truth leaves. I'm staying." Michelle scoffed. "Spare us the drama." He ignored her, turning to the cameras. America's eyes were unblinking. Raskin nodded. "The floor is yours." Swaggart tapped his tablet. A transaction map appeared, lines tracing funds from the Bahamas to Dubai, linked to charities. "Engineered laundering," he said plainly. Michelle barked, "Not mine, fake!" But gasps followed as a ledger surfaced. "Project renewal, flagged privately." Auditor Russell Knox stood firm. "This shell has no operations, only redirects." Michelle slammed her hand down. "Revenge, lies." Knox replied, "The timestamps show rehearsal. This is no accident." Swaggart's voice turned to steel. "Accountability is proven with data, not denied with words." Whispers filled the chamber. What else could there be? Elise Warren, a former aide, rose with a flash drive. A recording played, a cold voice saying, "He's trouble. Use what it takes." Quietly. Silence struck the room. Chairman Johnson demanded context. Elise admitted, "A recent meeting, unrecorded knowingly." Swaggart added, "Voice match confirmed by 3 labs." Michelle shouted, "Fake!" Naomi Estrada, an investigator, stood next. "I held this evidence for 47 days. The whistleblower feared retaliation. These finances scared me more than war zones." Gasps again. Michelle chuckled bitterly. "Pathetic." Estrada's reply was firm. "I'm a witness. I document truth." From the gallery, a trembling woman in her 60s sobbed. "My husband died. No aid came after the funding cuts." Swaggart reached out, acknowledging her pain in silence. He turned back to the cameras. Power issues orders, silence makes them possible. The lenses lingered on grief, the truest evidence of all. Then Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez entered, striding beside Swaggart. She handed over a folder from financial enforcement, linking the shell companies to other groups. "This is a mirror," she declared. "Ignore it, and we're complicit." Michelle scoffed again. "A socialist tag team." Swaggart nodded firmly. "Let's continue." He produced a black binder stamped "Confidential." "Inspector General." Johnson squinted as Swaggart opened it, sliding a memo beneath the camera. "A grant approval," Swaggart explained, "to a South Dakota nonprofit tied to flagged foreign entities. Buried under federal frameworks, but verified." Michelle shot up from her chair, voice rising. "Rubbish! He has no clearance." Swaggart replied, "Section 400B allows it." Turning to her counsel, Michelle hissed, "We're done." The screen flashed, a subpoena issued. She was ordered back to her seat. "Swaggart," the chairman intoned, "you are now a witness." Michelle froze, eyes cold. "You don't know what you're handling." Swaggart answered with quiet certainty, "I do." The binder still thick. The chamber braced for more. The pages revealed glaring discrepancies. Over $15 million in charitable donations, routed through a maze of offshore accounts, with beneficiary lists conspicuously absent from any public record. Jimmy Swaggart spoke with his steady Southern cadence, unhurried yet firm, laying out how these funds seemed to vanish into a tangle of shadow nonprofits, only to reappear later in political action committees tied to carefully targeted advocacy efforts. His words painted a picture of deliberate concealment, a stark betrayal of the transparency he had long championed. As he pressed deeper, journalists in the gallery leaned forward, typing with renewed urgency. Security officers remained sharp at their posts, the air in the chamber thickening with every revelation. Michelle tried to interrupt early, her voice rising with the authority she had carried in countless high-stakes arenas. She called the report a selective partisan compilation designed to discredit important work and turn truth into theater. Her tone carried weight, but Swaggart did not take the bait. He simply advanced, pulling up the next segment. Bank statements cross-referenced with precise timestamps, eerily aligned with major public announcements tied to Michelle's charities. His logic flowed like a river, carving stone, steady and unstoppable, eroding every attempt to dismiss the evidence. Chairman Mike Johnson nodded subtly, a faint approval flickering across his face as he urged Swaggart to continue. The evangelist did so, producing a USB drive discreetly handed to him earlier. He inserted it into the system. Moments later, the chamber filled with a chilling audio recording, a cold, commanding voice directing an associate to handle the obstruction quietly, dip into reserves if necessary to neutralize any threats. Gasps rippled through the room, the silence that followed amplifying the gravity of the words. Swaggart, unflinching, explained calmly, "Voice recognition software from 3 independent laboratories confirmed a 99% match. Piece by piece, his evidence formed a fortress rhetoric could not breach, a symphony of facts that reinforced one another with crushing weight." Then a new voice broke the silence. From the back of the gallery, Clara Hayes, a former mid-level employee of one of the implicated charities, stood. She clutched a folder of notes, her first tremor giving way to steady resolve. "I witnessed the irregular transfers myself," she declared. "Late-night directives to reroute donations without paperwork." Her testimony humanized the cold numbers, turning abstract figures into lived truth. Swaggart gave her a solemn nod, his appreciation evident in his brief words. "Thank you for your courage." Then he turned back to the evidence, projecting leaked emails from an anonymous whistleblower. The chains of correspondence outlined explicit efforts to obscure money trails, each timestamp verified through advanced metadata analysis. His presentation was methodical, letting the documents speak for themselves. Michelle countered sharply, her voice laced with venom. "She's just a bitter former staffer with an axe to grind, part of a smear campaign." But the mood of the room had shifted. Staffers whispered urgently among themselves. On social media, hashtags like #Swaggart exposes truth and #charity. Accountability surged, clips of the evidence spreading like wildfire. Then an unexpected figure rose. Marcus Reed, a freelance journalist known for exposing financial irregularities. From the press section, he held up a printed summary. "I've spent a year tracking the same patterns," he announced. His findings aligned almost perfectly with Swaggart's audit. The testimony confirmed that this was no isolated claim, but part of a broader systemic scheme. Swaggart welcomed Reed's input seamlessly, his calm presence encouraging a sense of shared pursuit. Others chimed in. An independent auditor testified the shell company had no real operations, merely acted as a funnel. A cybersecurity expert confirmed the email's authenticity using blockchain-style traceability. With every contribution, Michelle's defenses cracked further. Her lawyers huddled close, whispering frantically, their composure eroding as the evidence mounted. Outside the chamber, the reactions swelled like a tide. News networks cut to split-screen broadcasts, showing live reactions from ordinary citizens. Viewers stunned, outraged, and united in their call for accountability. Citizens across the nation voiced support for Jimmy Swaggart's relentless pursuit of truth. Online forums buzzed with debate, memes of his calm expression set against the backdrop of damning documents spread like wildfire. What began as a closed-door hearing transformed into a nationwide dialogue on ethics, governance, and the sacred trust of public stewardship. Swaggart, true to his nature, showed no hint of triumph. He pressed forward methodically, presenting a graphical chart that revealed how the suspicious funds aligned directly with sudden surges in lobbying expenditures. His data-driven approach was impossible to dismiss, exposing not just isolated anomalies, but systemic weaknesses demanding reform. The weight of his preparation became evident with each document, each testimony. His diligence inspired a growing alliance within the room. Chairman Johnson's approving nods, journalists probing questions, and beyond the chamber, ordinary Americans organizing watch parties and sharing stories of how opaque charities had betrayed their communities. Their collective voices amplified Swaggart's call for accountability. Clara Hayes's earlier testimony continued to resonate. Her recollections of late-night meetings and corners cut added flesh and blood to the cold figures. Swaggart's respectful acknowledgement of her courage emboldened others, creating ripples of bravery in the face of power. Marcus Reed built upon it, unveiling interactive maps tracing financial flows across borders, his independent findings reinforcing Swaggart's evidence with unshakable credibility. Social media boiled over as influencers shared clips, urging followers to demand reform. The pressure in the hall mounted to a palpable peak. Michelle's plea for a recess was denied by the chairman, who sensed the irreversible momentum behind Swaggart's pursuit. Undeterred, Swaggart unveiled covert video footage from another whistleblower. The grainy images showed clandestine meetings, voices hushed as funds were shifted in secrecy. The audio synced perfectly with the earlier recordings, completing a mosaic of evidence too vivid to ignore. Supporters in the gallery murmured approval, solidarity forming around Swaggart's steadfast figure. Michelle dismissed it all as conspiracy nonsense, but the facts stood like granite, unyielding, undeniable. The crescendo came as Swaggart revealed one last document, an internal memo casually admitting to creative accounting practices to maximize operations. He read the words aloud, his voice clear, unwavering. The chamber froze. Silence hung heavy, broken only by the frantic tapping of reporters' keyboards and the ceaseless ping of online notifications. Throughout the storm of evidence, Swaggart embodied substance over spectacle. His calm authority united witnesses and onlookers alike, sparking a movement for vigilance and reform that reached far beyond the walls of that hearing. The atmosphere shifted from tense anticipation to inevitability, the facts pressing down like a storm about to break. But Swaggart didn't linger in the moment of victory. His eyes reflected quiet determination as an unexpected ally entered. Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. She strode down the aisle, her black attire stark among the gray suits, carrying a sealed dossier from the New York Bureau of Financial Enforcement. Her voice rang clear as she took her place beside Swaggart. "I stand with him. This isn't about politics. It's about people." These records show the same shell companies funneled even more funds into lobbying efforts that harmed ordinary families. Swaggart accepted the dossier with genuine gratitude, his warm Southern tone replying, "Representative, your insight strengthens this shared pursuit of clarity." He integrated the new evidence seamlessly, projecting wire transfers that linked offshore entities to a broader web of influence peddling firms, showing millions siphoned away under the cover of charitable purpose. Swaggart's explanation was methodical yet accessible. He broke complex financial jargon into plain words, showing how diverted resources once meant for community programs had instead fueled high-stakes lobbying battles. The real-world harm was undeniable. Michelle's legal team grew restless, raising their objections louder with each slide of evidence, calling the new materials untimely and unverified. But the chairman overruled them firmly, recognizing that truth demanded a full and unflinching airing. The gallery buzzed with renewed energy. Journalists fired off tweets and live notes, amplifying the alliance's impact in real time. Then a voice rose from the public section, raw, trembling, yet resolute. It was Maria Gonzalez, a single mother in her 30s, dressed in simple clothes that spoke of hard-earned survival. Her hands shook as she stood, but her words shook the chamber more. She told how opaque charities' shortfalls had forced her to choose between rent and medical care for her child. "I don't understand all the numbers," she said, "but I know what it feels like when promises turn to dust and families like mine are left behind." Silence blanketed the chamber, broken only by scattered applause the chairman quickly subdued. The emotional weight rippled like a wave, forcing even the most stoic to confront the human toll behind the numbers. Swaggart turned to her with quiet empathy. "Miss Gonzalez, your voice reminds us why we fight, not for headlines, but for families like yours." His words transformed the hearing, giving ordinary testimony equal power to official documents. Her courage ignited sparks beyond the walls. Social media exploded with clips of her testimony. Hashtags like hashtag Swaggart stands with us trended as people from every background shared their own struggles with systemic failures. Yet as support swelled, so did the threats, anonymous calls in the dead of night, whispered warnings, suspicious packages left at his office, ominous notes urging him to back off before it's too late. But Swaggart met it all with unwavering resolve. In a quiet moment with aides, he said, "These shadows only prove we are shining light where it's needed most." He refused heightened security that might distance him from the people. This steadfastness elevated him in the public eye. News outlets hailed him as a beacon of courage, the everyman's champion who would not be cowed. Public sentiment surged like a tidal force. Letters poured into his Louisiana office by the truckload. Handwritten notes from teachers thanking him for exposing how misused funds starved education programs. Emails from veterans who lost critical support. Parents describing hardships like Gonzalez's. One letter struck especially deep. A young student in rural Idaho wrote, "You showed me that one person can make a difference. When I grow up, I want to be brave like you." Staff members, overwhelmed, read such letters aloud in emotional team huddles, their tears mingling with renewed determination. Representative Ocasio-Cortez amplified the momentum further. Using her vast online reach, she broadcast joint updates with Swaggart. Millions tuned in as she bridged generational gaps, drawing both young activists and cautious moderates. Together, they hosted virtual town halls where citizens shared lived stories, sessions that broke participation records. Petitions demanding full audits of implicated organizations collected signatures at breathtaking speed. Gonzalez's bravery unleashed a wave of similar voices. A retired nurse from Florida recounted on video how denied grants shuttered clinics in her town. A truck driver in Texas described job training programs that vanished. A small business owner in California exposed how lobbying tilted the playing field against families. Each account wove into a powerful tapestry that humanized the scandal, making silence impossible. Lawmakers felt the pressure, support Swaggart's cause, or face backlash from a roused public. Through it all, Swaggart stayed humble. He shunned personal glory, focusing on the work. Yet the people lifted him up. In Baton Rouge, street artists painted murals of his silhouette captioned "Guardian of Truth." In New Orleans, crowds rallied, chanting his name in solidarity. His modest office transformed into a nerve center of grassroots action. Volunteers from all walks of life, cataloging stories and turning pain into coordinated force. The threats intensified. Security protocols tightened after the FBI flagged a surge in online harassment aimed at Jimmy Swaggart. Agents installed panic buttons, patrolled discreetly, and urged him to take a hiatus for his safety. But Swaggart refused, shaking his head firmly. If I step aside now, who stands for Maria and the thousands like her? This is bigger than me. His words leaked to the press, only amplifying the public's admiration. Supporters gathered outside his home, holding candlelight vigils. Their flames became symbols of the light he was shining into the darkness. The gatherings were peaceful yet powerful, drawing media coverage that spread his message further. Representative Ocasio-Cortez's strategic involvement bridged ideological divides. Her fiery speeches balanced Swaggart's calm determination. Together, they hosted cross-party panels that drew unexpected endorsements, conservatives praising his tenacity, progressives applauding his focus on fairness. Their synergy built a coalition that transcended politics. While online fundraisers poured in, a direct rebuke to the misallocated millions. Ordinary voices multiplied. A farmer from the Midwest wrote about losing agricultural aid. His story went national, sparking congressional debate. Skeptics were forced to reconsider. Polls showed Swaggart's approval soaring, editorials hailing him as a paragon of civic virtue. His modest style resonated in an age tired of spectacle. Through the whirlwind, he remained grounded. Evenings were spent quietly, reading letters sent by the thousands. Each was a reminder of the stakes, fueling his persistence. He recognized this had grown beyond a solitary battle. It was now a movement, built on solidarity and courage. The movement reached its peak in a spontaneous assembly on the Capitol steps. Diverse crowds gathered, waving signs, "Stand with Swaggart." When he addressed them, his words were simple yet profound. "Together, we shine the light." The cheer roared, sealing his role as the catalyst for change, inspiring a nation to demand integrity from power. Back inside room 214, the echoes of that roar lingered. As the hearing closed, the air was heavy, not with confrontation, but with resolution. Swaggart sat steady at the table, his hands resting on the closed black binder marked "Confidential." Inspector General. Chairman Mike Johnson called for a closed session to vote on launching a formal investigation into the irregularities exposed. The oak doors sealed once more. 7 lawmakers crossed party lines to support the motion. Their votes came not from politics, but from conscience, a quiet promise of justice. Swaggart remained still during the tally, his eyes closing briefly as the motion passed. Not in triumph, but in acknowledgement of the immense responsibility now resting on his shoulders, the trust of a nation. Outside, the world was anything but still. Viral clips of his stand, especially his defiant, "If I leave, truth leaves," amassed tens of millions of views. Students in classrooms, workers on breaks, families around dinner tables replayed his words, each share fueling a civic awakening. That evening in Louisiana, Swaggart returned to his modest home under a violet-streaked sunset. Sitting with a cooling cup of tea, he reflected on the journey from one envelope to a nationwide cry for reform. A knock interrupted his solitude. A courier handed him a plain envelope. The name on the front was written in the looping script of a child. Inside was a letter from a 12-year-old girl in Nebraska. "Mr. Swaggart, you showed me that being brave means speaking up, even when it's scary. I want to be brave too." The words struck him with quiet power. He smiled softly and placed the letter on the windowsill, where the fading light touched its edges like a seal of hope. And the letters kept coming, thousands of them. From a nurse in Georgia whose clinic closed after funds vanished. From a veteran in Oregon, grateful for a voice given to the forgotten. Each note wove into a tapestry of resolve, a testament that this fight no longer belonged to one man alone. It belonged to the people. Each letter became a thread in a tapestry of gratitude and resolve. Swaggart's staff, though overwhelmed, found strength in reading them aloud, tearful huddles turning their modest office into a sanctuary of shared purpose, hands sorting through thousands of stories, each one feeling their commitment to press forward. The threats persisted, silent calls in the night, cryptic packages delivered under cover of darkness. The FBI escalated security, agents patrolling quietly, urging him to step away for his safety. But Swaggart met their concern with a steady gaze. If I stop now, who carries this forward for them? His refusal to retreat resonated. News outlets framed him as a symbol of unwavering duty. A viral clip captured him at a community center, reading a child's letter aloud. Oh, aloud, his voice soft but firm. These aren't just words, they're lives, and they deserve to be heard. The movement grew. Grassroots organizers launched campaigns under banners like Truth Stands. Rallies from Atlanta to Seattle saw teachers, farmers, and students carrying the signs with the young girl's words, "Be brave." Their unity transcended divides, demanding transparency in the stewardship of public trust. On social media, data visualizations of the money trails Swaggart had exposed went viral, turning complex audits into charts millions could grasp. Online petitions for federal oversight reforms gathered tens of millions of signatures, a testament to the power of collective action sparked by one man's stand. Swaggart never sought the spotlight. He declined interviews, choosing instead to focus on the work. But the people elevated him. Murals appeared in Shreveport, his silhouette captioned "Guardian of Truth." In New Orleans, churches wove his words into sermons, schools taught civics lessons with his example. Courage could bend the arc of history. Even his mother's voicemail tugged at him, "I want you safe, not famous." But Swaggart chose duty over comfort. Walking into each meeting with quiet steel, his presence rebuked intimidation. His office became a hub of reform, volunteers and staff turning letters into policy proposals for systemic change. Ocasio-Cortez remained a steadfast ally, her fiery advocacy amplifying his calm resolve. Together they hosted live forums, where mothers, workers, and retirees carried the same raw power as Maria Gonzalez's voice. Virtual town halls drew record numbers, inspiring local leaders nationwide to launch accountability campaigns. Ordinary stories multiplied. A factory worker in Michigan recording a video about lost job programs, a librarian in Arizona revealing how funding cuts gutted literacy efforts. Their voices wove into the national discourse, pressuring Congress as polls shifted decisively. Editorials praised Swaggart's integrity, calling him a model for public service in an era craving authenticity. The chapter closed not with fanfare, but in a quiet, profound moment back home in Louisiana. At dusk, Swaggart stood on his porch, the young girl's letter still on the windowsill, glowing in the fading light. It reminded him that his fight had inspired a generation to see courage not as a gift, but as a choice. The truth stood clear. Resisting power with evidence and conviction could awaken a nation, not through spectacle, but through steady resolve. His legacy was no longer his alone. It belonged to the people, their letters, vigils, and voices proving that truth, defended with courage, can outlast any threat, reshaping power's foundations one honest word at a time. It was the legacy of civic bravery, an invitation to all, to join, to speak, to act.